Welcome everybody for joining our Hillsborough Township Top of the Town podcast. My name is Vivek Rao. I live in Hillsborough more than 25 years. Today, we are addressing the tax of the Hillsborough Township and Board of Education increase close to 14% high tax in our Hillsborough history. The concern is very obvious and a significance amongst our parents, our residents, business owners, and most importantly, people who pay the tax. There's a lot of miscommunication, misinformation circulating among the Board of Education, residents across the New Jersey.
Yep.
To better understanding this complex tax increasing, today, we have been invited a very special guest who can give us the best answer of this tax increasing and remove all confusing and educate us. Today, we have a person who has more than 20 years in a schooling system and principal and teacher, and now he's a superintendent. Mr. Wolpe, welcome to our podcast. And thank you for being us and this educational podcast for how this tax increasing in Hillsborough. We hope all residential and taxpayer can find from this podcast the how increase, why, and what, and this can be used for anywhere.
Sure.
Mr. Wolpe, thank you again. So can you just give us your introduction about our viewers?
Sure, absolutely. Mike Volpe. I am the current superintendent of schools for the past 2.5 years, but I have been a Hillsborough resident since 1999. I've had 4 children graduate from Hillsborough High School and have a great education. My first job in the Hillsborough Township Public Schools was I was principal of Hillsborough Elementary starting in 2006, and I did that for almost 9 years. And then after that, I got promoted and came to central office where I was the director of human resources to help the hiring and retention of teachers and staff. After a little while, I was trying to explore my options. I left Hillsborough and I went to Princeton, where I was assistant superintendent there for a couple of years. And at that point, I left and I became a superintendent in Morristown in Burlington County. Then things happened here and there was a superintendent opening. And I really wanted to come back to Hillsborough because when I was in Princeton and when I was in Morristown, I tried to make them more and more like Hillsborough because we have really great instruction going on in the classrooms. So that's when I came back here in January of 2023. There was a lot going on at that point.
Yes, sir.
And I've been here for the past 2.5 years, and it has been the biggest pleasure of my career to come back home to be superintendent.
Thank you for your introduction, Mr. Superintendent.
Sure.
So my next question is this. As a superintendent, I know you principal before. Now as a superintendent, it's a bigger responsibility.
Sure.
And I know it's quite stressful also.
Could be, yes.
So can you just explain us as a superintendent of Hillsborough District School, what is your mission and vision for our students
Sure.
and the parents of Hillsborough Township?
Sure. When it comes to the mission and vision that I see for the school district, the very first thing that I want to do, that I always want to do, is make sure that I have a safe and comfortable environment in which an outstanding education can take place. And that's why one of the first things that I did when I came back here was to make sure that we had a lot of safety and security procedures as well as some security personnel. Once we have that environment set up, I want to have a place where all students feel welcome, all students can succeed and achieve to their biggest potential. And again, having had 4 students who went through Hillsborough and had those experiences, I just want to make sure that every other student who comes through here has the same opportunities that my children did.
Good explanation. So second questions for you. How do you handle good condition or completely, I would say, critical condition of the school and high school? How did you handle your staff, your students,
Sure.
and everybody who can be a calmly go through this critical situation?
Sure. That is one of the most difficult things about being a superintendent is how do you handle the good times and how do you handle the bad times when you're going through that. And a lot of the times you have to look on it as a case-by-case basis. And what I find, similar to this situation, is when you communicate with people clearly and directly, they understand where you're coming from. So even if it's a tough situation, you can agree to disagree, but everybody needs to move forward. And the one thing that I try to stress that we do, whether it's to staff members, whether it's to members of the community, whether it's to my own administrators, is that we try to make decisions that are in the best interest of students. And I think as long as you're making decisions that are in the best interest of students, people can still disagree, but they understand what your underlying philosophy is. And that's what I will try to continue to do as superintendent moving forward, is whenever there's a tough time or a good time, to make sure that we're just focusing on our students.
Good. So even today, I know you explained me how you're handling good time and bad time, critical times, and you're doing very well.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to move for a second question.
Sure.
What is your best rewarding aspect of serving as a Hillsborough superintendent?
Yeah, the most rewarding part of being the Hillsborough superintendent is kind of relates back to my last answer. I told you what I'm looking for and to focus on the students. I don't like spending a lot of time in this room, in this office. As a superintendent, you have to do the paperwork and you have to be here. But when I get out into the schools and I interact with the staff and the students and see the success and the energy that is taking place, and I get that good feedback and good news, or sometimes if I get that bad feedback so that I can make changes with what we're doing, that's the most important, is connecting with people, seeing the impact that we make with students. It's very rewarding.
Very good. So move to next questions.
Sure.
So Hillsborough District School, in total, how many schools we have?
We have 9 schools.
9 schools.
So we have 6 elementary schools that are K-4. Autumn Road Intermediate School is a 5-6 school. The middle school houses 7 through 8, and our high school is all 9 through 12.
Good. So I can feel that. We all know it's a very stressful, very multitask. You are doing everything.
Sure.
How do you empowering and mentoring and keeping everybody in a same page? How do you mentoring them to all students and staffs and surrounding area, all people who work with you?
Yeah, wow, that's a big question. How do I take care of all the staff and everyone right there too, and students? I think what I try to do as superintendent, and I've tried to do that for the past couple of years, is I have tried to come in with some guiding philosophies and some visions, and also to do some systems engineering where we set up processes and procedures here in the district. Then I try to hire good people, and I try to empower them to do their job. I am not a micromanager. I do not go up to everybody and tell them, you have to do it this way. I ask them, what do you think the best way is for you to do something, and can you have success with that? If they say yes, I say, give it a shot and bring it back to me. And I think that's really how I empower people. And then my expectations of my administrators who are in the buildings is the same way of that with teachers and the same way with students. Listen, we can help you get to where you want to get, but I want you to give it a shot. I want you to try to show me that you have the skills and the ability to do that. And if you don't, then we'll step in, we'll provide some extra mentoring, we'll provide some training and whatever you need.
So the second question is, what is a whole Hillsborough district in school, high school, or any kind of, what is the biggest challenging you guys facing right now?
Well, the biggest challenge since I've been here has been the financial situation, and I know we're going to talk about that too. If we start to stabilize our financial situation, I would say the biggest issue beyond that, it's more of a statewide issue. I wouldn't even say necessarily a Hillsborough issue. We've noticed over the years that less and less people are going to college to become teachers. So there's a lot of competition out there for the few teachers that are out there. Mm-hmm. And when they're interviewing, we're finding a lot of times we really have to sell ourselves to candidates to get the best people to come here. But sometimes we will have openings that are very difficult to find someone to fill that slot. a lot of times, particularly in some of the more technical areas, such as if I need a new physics teacher, like everybody in the state is looking for a physics teacher, sometimes with computer science. So I think if we can find ways to work with the state legislatures to make it a little bit easier for people to go into the area of education, that would be very helpful. That's more global. I think for Hillsborough specific, trying to get our finances stable so we don't have these years where we're cutting and then raising taxes and then cutting. I think that's the biggest challenge for me specifically to be working on with the board as superintendent.
Very good. This is the second question, a little bit make you uncomfortable, but I have to ask you.
That's okay. I've answered uncomfortable questions before.
I'm meeting a lot of different, communities.
Sure.
And there's a lot of different community in Hillsborough, diversified, and Hillsborough getting bigger and bigger.
Absolutely.
Bigger. So sometimes we talk about it, we think about it. How do you, Board of Education, has a relationship with Hillsborough Township staff and elected members of the township? How this relationship you guys having with them?
Sure. Well, there's two different levels to this, and this is something that I often speak with Administrator Ferreira about too. The Board of Education and Hillsborough Township are two completely separate governmental entities. The township does not have oversight over the Board of Education, and the Board of Education does not have oversight over the township. There's a lot of times that we have to work together and communicate together, but we are very separate as far as what we do on a day-to-day basis. That being said, when it comes to relationships, one of the things that I've worked really hard with during this time is to make sure that we have a good relationship. I think that in years past, for a whole variety of different reasons, there was like this conflict between the township and the Board of Education. And what I want to make sure is that, like I said, everybody is working together because we all want our kids to succeed. We all want our community members to feel heard. And honestly, we all want to have like a stable tax system for everyone, and that requires us communicating. That being said, there's work that the township does that if we're going to disagree about it, they're going to have to do their thing. And if we disagree about it, we're going to have to do our thing. So we don't really meet regularly to go over things, but we do communicate on a regular basis to work on that relationship. I hope that answers your question.
Well, I want to add you one thing. Like you explained very well about township staff and management stuff. The elected member for township who elected to run the office.
Sure.
Like again, Board of Education, township members, management, and elected members.
Absolutely.
So how you guys in the same line, same page?
Yeah, I mean, there's always things that you're going to disagree about, but I feel that if I needed to speak to, the staff here for the township, that they would listen to me. If I need to speak to Administrator Ferreira, he has an open door policy that I'm able to speak. And if I need to speak to any of the committee people, there's been many times I've spoken to Mayor Ciccarelli about items. And there may be agreement, there may be disagreement, but I think if there's anything big happening in the township, it's important for us to communicate. An example on that end too would be like before the first couple of days of school, the township had changed some of the roads that they were working on, that changed the bus routes and everything too. And because we have good communication, we're able to get that information out. If we weren't communicating to each other, it might be difficult to inform everyone of what they need to be informed about. But I've been in plenty of meetings with the elected mayor, the elected members of the township committee, as well as members of their staff too.
Good to hear for that, Mr. Wolpe. So the next topic is that in Hillsborough Township, every household holder has been impacted by these tax increasing situations. So my questions is for you. Can you please explain to Hillsborough students and residents and taxpayer, we think you increased historical high 14% of tax. Can you please explain us every family members in Hillsborough how this tax exactly works? Because we're listening so many rumors and misinformation.
Sure.
That's why I want to ask you this question.
Yeah, and I think first and foremost, particularly as a taxpayer myself, I understand how people are feeling the impact of it. And it was a very large tax increase. Depending on your house and your reassessment, I don't know for you if it was a 10, a 14, a 15% increase on you. But what I can tell you is that on our tax levy, It was a 22% tax increase, and that is high. There's no doubt about it. But let me explain to you where this comes from. And it's not just a one-year situation. It's something that happened over a long period of time, and I'll try to make it as simple as I possibly can for you. Even 15 or 20 years ago, the Board of Education had made decisions when they were creating budgets to not go to their maximum cap, which was a 2% increase on the budget. And every time they didn't, there was that gap of money they could have raised, but didn't. So put that aside just for a second. Then as we moved forward, there was a new state funding formula. And the state funding formula came up with multiple variables. But the most important variables are two things called the adequacy budget and the local fair share. And I'll try to make this very simple for you. The adequacy budget is what the state of New Jersey says, hey, all school districts, this is how much it should cost for a school district to run. And then they had something called your local fair share. And they believe that, and this is how much that a town should raise through local taxes. So you could have your adequacy budget here, and you could have your local fair share here. Then in between, if it didn't match, the state comes in with state aid and gives school districts money. The problem with that is the state wants to make sure before they give you aid that you are paying your local fair share. So when I talked back to 15 years ago and we weren't going to cap, our local fair share started going down and down and down and down. And that's why we had stable property taxes for a long period of time. But then the state stopped giving us aid. And they said, Hillsborough, you're not paying your local fair share, so we're going to stop giving you aid. And that's why 7-8 years ago, you started seeing things like budget cuts and staff being reduced because we could never make up that gap. Now, there's a 2% cap in the state of New Jersey. So once you start falling below that, you can never make that up. 2% is 2%. When I came in as superintendent 2.5 years ago, I went to the state assembly and I went to the Senate. I was actually on the floor for Governor Murphy's last State of the State address, talking to anybody that I could and said, this is not fair. Not only is taking the state aid away from us hurting us, but there's no way for us to make it up. We can't go past the 2% cap. Now, it wasn't just me. There was about 1/3 of superintendents in the state who were in the same position. So what happened this past year is the state realized, hey, somehow this is unfair. But the state wasn't going to give us all the money to make up to get to that local fair share. And they created this opportunity and said, for 1 year, all that money you were complaining about that you don't have, you can go past the 2% cap for 1 year and get to where you need to get to so you're no longer punished with state aid moving forward. When this came out from the state, I actually did not bring this plan forward because when the state came out with it, they told us we have 10 days to figure out whether or not we want to do it. And when I was looking at the numbers, a 22% tax increase potentially, and thinking, I don't have enough time to communicate this out to the community like I am right now so that everybody understands. We had 10 days, take it or leave it. So I didn't bring it forward to my board. My board president, looking back on it very courageously, said, bring it on the agenda. He wanted it on the agenda. Let's talk about it with the board members. So my budget last year, and kind of embarrassed to say this, called for the cutting of about 20 staff members, elimination of courtesy busing, and a whole lot of other things if we could only go to that 2% cap. So the board eventually voted 5-4 to take advantage of all that money over those years that we could not raise to not only set us up for success last year, but set us up for success moving forward. So I know that's a long answer, but it happened very quickly last year within the span of about 10 days. And what I can tell you from the Board of Education members, there is no intent ever to engage in something like this again, because we are now where we should be. And even if the state takes more money away from us or healthcare costs go up higher, we now have that money where we should be back in that zone where taxes are predictable and should only go up 2% every year. It's a complicated situation to try to explain to people because honestly, it was complicated when I got the information from the state, having 10 days to figure it out and having a board that was very split on it. So that's where all of that happened.
I understand that's a little bit longer educational explanation that
Sure.
we needed basically as a public platform.
Absolutely.
So moving forward from that, you already mentioned 4 and 5. So including myself, a lot of people don't know in Hillsborough how many Board of Education members who
Sure.
elected from the township people.
Yep. There are 9 elected members of the Board of Education, and I believe that this year in November you will be voting to fill 3 of those seats. But each and every year we have 9 members of the Board of Education.
So can you explain us one more time out of 9? How many members say yes and how many members say no?
Sure.
And lastly, they're all hopefully local Hillsborough long-time residents.
Yes, I can't testify to how long each of my board members have lived in town. I just don't know that off the top of my head. But all of the elected members of the Hillsborough Board of Education, yes, are Hillsborough residents. So they felt the tax impact of this just like you. And there were actually 2 separate votes, and I'll try to explain that. We had a 10-day or 2-week window where first we had to vote on, did we want to study this further? Because we had to let the state know if we were even interested in this option. When that was discussed by the Board of Education, that passed with a 6-3 vote. Then within a week and a half, it came back to the Board of Education for the actual vote on, do we actually want to raise the taxes to the maximum that we can? And that went 5-4, 5 in favor of doing so and 4 against. So there are still some people on the Board of Education who, wish that it didn't happen. And there are still some people who were like, yes, it was absolutely the right thing. But in the end, the board speaks as one voice. So even if it's 5-4, obviously something still moves forward.
Good. So that's good to know about in Hillsborough Township, the every 2 years election Board of Education.
Actually, we have elections every year for the Board of Education, but it's rotating depending on whose time it is to vote. So each and every year, you will be voting for either 1, 2, or 3 board members, depending on who's eligible.
Good to know. So the second question is the tax increasing very high. Mm-hmm. And you explained as previously years we did not increase much tax as we supposed to be. Mm-hmm. That's good to know. So including myself and my family, a lot of people in township don't know how this high tax has been used as a superintendent in Hillsborough Township. As an example, some percentage go to the education.
Sure.
Some go to the building repair. Some
Sure.
go to the add new classes or staff. And most of percentage is like salary and benefits of the staff. Can you explain a little bit?
Sure. I'm happy to break that down. And it changes from year to year, but in general, I can tell you first what's going on this year and why it's changed a little bit from previous years. So this year, about 72% of our entire budget will go towards the salaries and benefits of everybody who works in the district. Myself, teachers, custodians, all salaries and benefits. Then for things like buildings and grounds and projects like, working on a roof, things like that, that's about 17% of our budget. And I have raised that amount in this year's budget because what I did not want to do was when we raise the taxes, spend it on all costs that I'm going to have to do again each and every year. If I hired 100 more teachers this year, I'd have to hire 100 more teachers next year. And that's an extended cost. If I put money aside to fix a roof this year, well, hopefully the roof is fixed. Mm-hmm. And then we can use that money for other things the next year. So it was important to keep a lot of money in non-recurring costs. And that's about 17% of our budget. Then transportation is a big part of our budget too. We spend about 7% of our overall budget on transportation. We have a mix of in-house drivers who pick up kids, but we also hire some other outside companies as well to pick up and drop off our kids. We don't have a transportation facility big enough where we can hold enough buses to do everything internally. Then, in addition to the salaries and benefits for all of our students, another 3% of our overall salary goes towards additional special education costs, not just their teachers or things like that, but additional costs for things that special education students would need. Sometimes that's what's called an out-of-district placement, meaning if they have intensive needs and we don't have the program here, we are still responsible for educating them. And if there's a particular school elsewhere that works with students with particular disabilities, we would end up paying that tuition for them to go. But about 3% of our overall budget is for that. Then the last percentage of our budget, which is 1%, but it's still a big number, are for miscellaneous things. It helps with school supplies, other kinds of things throughout the course. But it's basically this year 72% salaries and benefits, 17% for buildings and grounds and projects, 7% in transportation, and 3% for additional special education costs.
Wow. So this is explanation I'm looking for a long time back. It's in your website. You have so many videos there. Mm-hmm. But the particular subject line is too difficult to find a video. This is a good explanation. My second question is, there's anywhere in near future or future this tax going to high? Is anywhere this tax going to be decreased or lower the tax where we are right now? There's any possibility out there?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. And I'm sure as both a taxpayer myself, we would all love to see our taxes go down. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I don't anticipate taxes going down where you're potentially paying less. There is one scenario that could happen. I think 7 out of the past 9 years, the tax rate for the Hillsborough Township Public Schools actually went down. The tax rate has gone down. But you might think to yourself, well, then why am I paying more taxes each and every year? Because you combine the tax rate with the reassessment of your home. And remember earlier when I talked about two separate entities, the township and the school board will set the tax rate, but then the township reassesses your home. So if your reassessed home goes higher, then your tax rate goes down, you're still paying more in taxes. So the only way that you would end up paying less in taxes would be if your assessment stayed the same and then the tax rate went down. Under that scenario, you could certainly pay less in taxes. What I am going to be advocating for with the Board of Education at the upcoming meeting, and I will be sending out a video to the public, a snipped version of this too, is that we don't need to go to 22%. We can't even legally do that, but we don't need to do that anymore. Last year was the bite the bullet. Mm-hmm. You got the money to be where you are, and we go back to that 2% on the amount that we can raise the overall taxes, and that's it. At this point, unless something very different happens at the state, if we do 2% a year, every year for the next several years moving forward, we should be financially stable and should not be in a situation where we have to cut a lot of teachers. So getting back to your original question, there's a very minute circumstance under which you would pay less in taxes. But as a resident, I want to see stable taxes and stable schools. So if we can just assure that it's 2% every year and it's not 2, 22, 2, 0, like people want to have some stability and understand what's coming so they can budget just like I can.
Good explanation. We are closer to our podcast. I'm not going to give more hard time. So, Mr. Volpe, in a township, you see last 10, 15 years, a lot of people who moving in township because it's a top 100% living township.
Sure.
Education system is very, very good. So students go get high SAT, go to higher university, getting better educations and stuff like that. Last couple of months, I come across and meeting a lot of people around the town. The moving in township usually is a word of mouth.
Sure.
I say 5 friends of mine, you say 5 friends of mine. That's how the people moving in, and business owners as well as. Honestly speaking, I hear so many places. There's a lot of new coming inner they rethink them to don't move in Hillsborough.
Sure.
And there's a lot of businesses, small businesses particularly, or big mid business, the residents of township also. They might be moving out from their business to somewhere else. So the main concern is, what is your message for coming in new residents or parents or students or business owners? The best explanation, they can stay here and they can still move in.
Sure. Yeah, and I think I'll relate this to me a little personally as well. But first, I would say I am not so hubristic or self-centered to tell everybody what to do for your individual family. If someone feels like Hillsborough isn't for them, I have to respect that. And if you want it to be elsewhere, you could. But let me tell you why Hillsborough is right for me and why I think it's right for a lot of people. As I said, I've been here, a resident here for 25 years. I had 4 kids who went through our great school system. They all went to good schools, 2 to Georgetown, 1 to the University of Delaware, 1 to TCNJ. 2 have graduated and they're succeeding, and the other 2 are still there. I also know when we talked about that connection with the township, I know Mayor Ciccarelli and Mr. Ferreira for a long time have built up so many of the other things in town, such as our recreational facilities, and it was named one of the best places to live. So you have that true partnership about strong schools as well as a strong and safe community. But the question, I think, boils down to the taxes, and I get it. I'm not happy that I'm paying that much more in taxes either. But my hope and my prediction moving forward is, as I explained earlier, that was the 1 year that we had to do it. We had to jump in, the board had to jump in, make that vote, and get what they needed, and now we should have a stable tax base. So for those of you who are thinking about Hillsborough, I still say it's a wonderful place to be, and lots of towns right now, particularly in the state of New Jersey, are dealing with that property tax problem and situation. But I truly believe that we are now getting to an area where we are stable, and someday I'm not going to be superintendent here anymore. And what's going to happen when I walk away is I'm going to hope a few things. Number 1, did I make the education system better? Number 2, did I help stabilize the finances? And did I make this place as safe of a place as I can possibly do that? And I believe by the time I'm done here, I'm going to be able to say that. And I hope that that will be important to some people. I understand that for some people, the tax burden is the number 1 issue. And we're in New Jersey, and that tends to be the number 1 issue everywhere. So, look at what Hillsborough has to offer and make the right decision for you and your family. I'm not going anywhere. Even after I'm done being superintendent, we'll still be here. So that's my plug for Hillsborough.
Mr. Superintendent, that was a good explanation and educational. You update us about Hillsborough tax increasing situation. Mm-hmm. And this podcast will be help across the Hillsborough and neighbor township as well as.
Sure.
Because Hillsborough Township taxpayers has a concern, but neighbor township has a concern as well as they can increase their town. Mm-hmm. So this podcast will be very well educated and will create awareness about how tax work, how they divide it, which department use how many percentage, and how many total Hillsborough, our staff, our students, our parents, and Hillsborough business owners. So this will be, Mr. Superintendent, this is a historical podcast for us. And again, thank you so much, and we appreciate you. What is your message, the final message, to our taxpayer residents of Hillsborough Township?
Absolutely. And first, that I feel it. It's important for you to know that I'm a Hillsborough taxpayer too. Not somebody who lives and works in a different town and then comes here for his job. I am Hillsborough too. The township has entrusted the Board of Education, who has entrusted me with a large amount of money. I'm going to spend that wisely and make sure that that lasts over time. I am not going to spend it on things that are going to reoccur each and every year right away. So in a couple of years, we need to bring this back up again. And the final thing that I want you to know is, although the board does have to vote on the budget, my recommendation to the board will be to not go past that 2%. I can't imagine any other circumstances that we would need to advocate for going past 2% anymore. We did it last year. It's supposed to be a one-time thing to get things moving, and that's what I can promise the Hillsborough taxpayer.
Mr. Superintendent, thank you for your
Thank you so
time
much.
and kindness and willing to give us this podcast.
Absolutely.
For our taxpayers and residents and business owners, the Talk of the Town podcast is for the Hillsborough community. We will come back to you soon. More educational awareness about things like tax or schooling system, how students work, how staff works, how staffs are providing a better education to our students. And all these questions, we will definitely come back to you with more podcasts with our superintendent or principal or school or anything else. Come back. We will come back to you and give you more educational podcasts. Thank you, everybody, for watching us.